the Circling Seattle Sports Seattle Kraken preview. I know Tim has loved every bit of the preseason. He loves how long it is. He loves, all the camp stuff we're doing. Yeah, it's crazy that I'm just glad next year we'll have the 84 games and it feels like what, 3 days of camp. I don't know what it is exactly, but it'll be less than this.
I think it's 13 days. Next year, as part of the new CBA, is that's all camp is 13 days.
I can
And I
work
think
with
it's
that.
maybe two preseason games, something like that.
I think
It's
so.
really short.
It just feels like we've been like in the preseason and doing camp stuff forever, and I'm tired of it already. Um, this is of course continuing the Seattle Kraken season preview sort of thing. Tim Booth with the Seattle Times previously, Associated Press. I guess he likes Central Washington University, something like that. It's great to have Tim on. I've learned a lot from Tim the last few years. As much as he doesn't want to hear that, he just wants to call me bald. So Tim, I'll go into it. Get going first. The three goalies. I know the goaltender situation in Seattle has been a major topic of discussion by both, obviously, us in the local media, national media. Like it feels like whenever they talk about the Kraken, they're mentioning the goalies. The three goalie idea. I know that's not certified. They've talked about it. We're probably going to see more Philip Grubauer tonight, after I believe Matt Murray got the whole game in Vancouver. I don't know. What do you think about the three goalie idea? Can it work, especially considering the condensed schedule and anything I guess you've seen out of the two goaltenders, whether it be in camp or limited preseason action? Just the goaltender situation. How do you look at it? Because I think it's fascinating because you've got Nikkei Coco down in Coachella Valley, and I would like for him to like continue his development there. But if you send Matt Murray down, you just having him sit on the shelf. I don't. How do you view the goalie situation here?
Tenuous, I guess, would be one way to describe it. I think the three goalie idea can work, and they have the cap space in order to make it work. I think that's the number one thing is carrying an extra goalie doesn't hamper them in that capacity. Like they can have three goalies, they're not, up against the cap. It works. It's not going to eat up a roster spot from that standpoint. But you're in a really weird spot because you brought up a great point there because you want your young guys down at Coachella to be playing. You want them to be getting ice time. And if you send Matt Murray down there or you send Philip Grubauer down there, that is going to be a lost opportunity. So you've kind of put yourself in the position where you kind of have to carry the three on your NHL roster. Whether that actually means you're rotating three guys, that's the part I think we have to wait and see it play out because Joey's clearly number one, and Joey's going to get the bulk of the playing time, and Joey should get the bulk of the playing time. Um, is Groovy fixed? I think that's the big thing. And to your point, like him playing in theory, an entire preseason game will be a good test to see where he's at right now. Um, but you're going to have, at some point, you're going to have to make that determination whether you feel like he is at a level you can throw him out there for an NHL game and see what you have. He has a lot of incentive to be adequate. I don't know if he's ever going to be good again, but he has a lot of incentive to be adequate, both financially because of the structure of his contract. And, no player wants to go through a buyout and then have to go sign a veteran minimum kind of deal or a very minuscule, financial deal that maybe he would get elsewhere. But he also has the entire specter of the Olympics and the fact that he's already been named to the German team for the Olympics and the fact that Germany has like no other goalies. Like they actually have decent um a couple of decent, players like Leon Draisaitl, Morris Seitzer, like you have a handful of really, good NHL level players, but Philip Grubauer is your only like proven goalie that they're going to take with them to Milan for the Olympics. So he has that incentive to go out there and show that you can throw him out there every third night or every third game, and you're going to get a NHL replacement level performance because that's what they did not get last year. They did not get NHL replacement level performance out of their backup goalie, and it cost them a lot of points, especially in the first half of the season when they were teetering whether they were going to be in or be out. not contention, but at least the conversation. And then you have Matt Murray, who by all accounts is just a straight up veteran. Like he understands what his role would be. He understands why he's here. He like to me, the idea of him being on the roster to start the season is beyond the break glass in case of emergency, um, level of concern. It's okay, Gruby just doesn't have it anymore to the level that we need. Okay, now it's going to be, two Joey games, one Matt Murray game, one Joey game, one Matt Murray game, and then on they're playing San Jose, or they're maybe San Jose is a bad example. They're playing Chicago, or someone who's still in a rebuild mode. Okay, Groovy, you're going to get that game, but his opportunities are going to be really limited. So, um, I I think they can. Going back to your original question, yes, they can carry three, and I think it works to carry three, and I understand why they very likely will carry three. How it's all implemented, I think, is going to be the really fascinating piece to watch. And frankly, they might make the decision before the opener that, hey, Gruby just doesn't have it for us anymore. He needs to go somewhere else to get an opportunity to play. We don't want to stash him in Coachella, and they figure out some sort of trade or some sort of buyout and release at that point.
Yeah, and that was something I'm looking at here. I apologize. Again, they're doing sound check here at Climate Pledge Arena. The buyout numbers for him this year, the cap hit would be just under 2 million. You save about 4 million. You get to the better side of things with this contract now, because I believe in the last few years, if you had done it, you'd be eating more.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, the more I sit here and think about it as this is happening again in the back, I don't even know if you can hear it.
I can't hear it.
Um,
You're good.
Perfect. I think it is, in terms of like the bigger picture, it's ideal to have Matt Murray up here, because I don't know how much you've seen of him. I know one of our writers, Jay, did a piece on him. Victor Osterman has had a solid camp. I know, he ate a lot of time up in the ECHL. He had his debut game in the NHL this last season as well, in addition to Coco. If you're able to let the two future goaltenders, I don't know if Osterman necessarily, I believe it's more Coco, the future of your net, but get those guys more development, because he dominated the ECL at HL last year with Kansas City. I don't think he's going to get any better doing that again this year. So I just think, yeah, that Coachella Valley tandem should be Austin and Coco. Um, yeah, no, that's interesting. You mentioned Joey, and I'll go straight to that. Can he replicate, what he's done? I guess really from kind of late 2 seasons ago, Winter Classic on last year, you worry about breaking a guy, right? I've talked to RJ from Emerald City Hockey about this, especially the contract he signed, right? He's earning 5 million a year through the 29-30 season. So you've tied yourself to him. I know there's concern with signing a goalie long term, especially he's not old, and I'm not, he's 29. He's not on the younger side of things. Just I don't know. I don't know if I ever mentioned, like, had that conversation with you about signing a goalie for that much term at that age. But how do you view this year for Joey? I mean, if all things go well, he could, maybe see himself, going to the Olympics as well. I know the USA has got the goaltender, like they've got a pretty strong group there, but I don't know. Do you think Joey can replicate that? Do we see is he good enough to keep going as what was statistically a top five guy the last few years?
It's funny. Like we could have a full conversation just about the term decisions that they made on certain contracts with this entire franchise. Um, yes, I think Joey can replicate it, and I think there's a couple of factors at play. One is the Olympics. I had a 20-minute sit down with Joey a couple weeks ago. He wants to earn his way onto that plane to Milan. Now, that means most likely either Jeremy Swayman's taking a step back, Thatcher Demko isn't Thatcher Demko, Dustin Wolf can't be what he was this last year, and Jake Ottinger maybe is having a down moment because barring an injury, Connor Hellebuck is on that plane and he's going to Milan and he's your starting goalie. But everything beyond that, you talked about the depth that the U.S. has. Like it's absurd the amount of depth the U.S. has. Canada would love to have that depth. But he's in that mix and he's in that conversation. Like when they had the Olympic orientation camp last month or in August, he there were four goalies invited: Swayman, Ottinger, Hellebuck, Daccord. So he's clearly in the conversation in USA Hockey's view of potentially being someone that they could throw on the plane and throw in a game if they needed to in Milan and give them the type of performance that that they expect on that stage. So that right there is a huge, I think, enticement, motivation, whatever, for him to start the season strong and to um like you said, and to try and replicate, I guess, what he did the past 2 years. Another factor is yes, he's 29, but he hasn't played a lot. You know, if you look at kind of his career path, you know, he wasn't playing, um, he wasn't playing juniors. He wasn't playing on the national teams when he was U17, U18. He wasn't in the World Juniors conversation. He went and played college at Arizona State, so he's playing a college schedule. Like he's a little bit on the older side, but he's not a goalie that has a lot of wear and tear on him. He hasn't played a ton of games. It's not an equal comparison to like how Geno Smith went through this huge stretch with the in his career where he wasn't getting much playing time, and by the time he got another chance to start, he was in his 30s. But you kind of see the path that those guys go. He doesn't have multiple seasons of playing 50 games in net at this point. So I think that works overall in terms of can he keep this up for more than just a year and a half that we've really seen so far. And I'm wondering too how a better defensive structure, because we think that they're going to have a better defensive structure, will make things easier on him. His goals saved above average the last couple of years is kind of ridiculous when you look at it in comparison with some of the top guys. I mean, it is. It's among some of the top guys in the NHL. Um, he's had to work really hard a lot of nights. And a lot of that, especially last year, was due to a really poor defensive structure in front of him. If they are able to play better, more structured defensively, give up less high danger chances, give up less of the doorstep wild flailing saves that he's having to make, keep things as much as possible on the perimeter, then that bodes well for him having less stressful games in net, and maybe that means overall less wear and tear on him as the season goes on. So I do think that he's going to be able to a degree, match what he's done the last couple of years. If he's taking a significant jump of improvement beyond what we've seen the last two seasons, we're going to be talking about him in the Venza conversation. And at times it kind of came up a little bit here and there the last couple of years. But if his goals against is suddenly 2.3 and his save percentage is 9, 945, 950, something ridiculous like that, like one, he might be getting on the plane to Milan, and two, we might be having that conversation about him being considered one of the best goalies in the league.
It's like you're reading my notes here. To segue to the defensive side of things, I know you and I have had this conversation. I've mentioned it on our Kraken show, but like looking at this blue line, right, and seeing 2, 4, 5 defensemen making over 4.5 mil a year, which is an interesting thing to say, and then also having 5 defensemen with left shots, at least listed per Puckpedia. How do you view the blue line? Because at least I had this conversation with Everett, with I'm not saying name recognition is important all the time, right? But like having I would say there's a good amount of talent on your blue line, and the numbers against were extremely poor. I don't know if how much blame you put on Bob Woods. I don't know how much blame you put on having different coaches in different years, right? But it was not good. None of that was good. Um, and yeah, we've heard so much with Lane Lambert about defensive structure. You brought it up. Um, Having some decent moniker of strong defense could, yeah, certainly help the case you're just talking about. How do you look at the blue line? Because I mean, maybe I'm a curmudgeon in this regard. I've kind of soured on Jamie Alexiak. I understand wanting to take care of your body, but so much is made of his big frame. I feel like you don't see that necessarily on a night to night basis. Vince Dunn makes a lot of money. He makes, the highest AAV on your team. He's dealt with injury. I know you can't control that. You just bring in Ryan Lindgren for 4.5 mil, which, he seems like a nice guy, tough, hard nosed, all that. But just adding a lot of money to a blue line that hasn't seen strong results. How do you look at the blue line, and do you expect him to shake something up? I mean, I'd have to imagine if things don't go well, Jamie Alexiak's moved at the deadline. I was surprised he wasn't moved last year, and other folks have brought up, hey, what about, Vince Dunn's contract is up in 2 years. Maybe, you know, given what he could return, he could be someone you look at as well. How do you view the blue line, at least for this season? I mean, if you want to look further ahead, be my guest.
Um, the blue line is like the rest of the roster. Like you have your top two pairs would be at best number two pairs for most teams. For most contending teams. It's the same with we talked about with the forwards. They have a bunch of second and third liners in their forward group, just like they have a bunch of second liners in their blue line group. Like you have four, maybe five, depending on pairings, legitimate second pair blue liners. Like on most teams, Adam Larson and Vince Dunn are second line. On most teams, Brandon Montour and Riker Evans are second line. I would throw Ryan Lindgren in there as probably a second liner, depending on who he's paired with. Um, so it's again like this team to have success has to play with such structure and has to play with such depth and has to play with such contributions from that depth, and it goes from the forwards to the blue line. You have to get I mean, again, to your point, like you can't control injury to a certain extent, but you have to get more out of Vince Dunn. You have to get more out of Brandon Montour in the sense of he got away last year from playing the kind of the structured style that worked in Florida, and he became more of a freelancer, which on that team he kind of had to become a freelancer a little bit, but it led to him being not as good defensively. Um, I give the guy a lot of credit because he gives a spark and energy to a room and to a team that needs it. But at times last year, I think he freelanced too much and it left them in some bad positions. Um, Riker Evans has to make a jump. Like you've now committed to him with his new deal for a couple of years. He needs to make a jump this year and show that he's more than just a third pair defender, and that he can play regularly up as a first pair, like he did when Dunn was out last year. Lindgren is a nice guy. He plays golf. Um, but he's kind of for now. He's just the guy. Now he's got a lot of experience. He's played on some good teams in New York, but he's kind of just a guy for the moment. Now, but if you pair just a guy who's sound defensively with someone who's got some spark offensively, like Montour, okay, that's an okay second pairing. Um, Larson and Dunn are going to play together again. I do worry if maybe Big Cat might be losing a step. He is getting up there in years. He's played a ton of games in his career. It's one of the great things about him is his durability and the fact that you can count on him to be out there every night, but he's played a lot. So I do worry, at this point of his career, if we start to see a little bit of regression in his game, and how does that affect Dunn if Dunn can't be as offensive as you need him to be because he is such an offensive threat out there at the blue line. And then the Jamie Alexiak question, like I'm like you, I'm stunned he's still on this roster. It made no sense to me why you would bring him back. It should have been a move that was made this offseason. Josh Mahura, while he's not size wise the same as Jamie Alexiak, I think is actually at times more willing to throw his body around and use it along the boards and along the wall. Um, I think he's a very sound defensive guy who's probably going to rotate in with that group at times during the season. So it's To me, Alexiak's kind of like the it doesn't he doesn't quite fit unless he changes his game a little bit, unless he's more willing now being in a contract year to go throw his body around more, use his physicality more. Maybe the structure of Lane Lambert's system fits him better defensively. Can he be a little bit more of a offensive impact when they get the puck into the offensive zone? It's a little bit of a wait and see with him, but I like you, like if there's going to be a lot of guys that are in this boat, but if they get to the deadline and they're out of it, Alexiak should absolutely be moved. You really should consider all offers on Vince Dunn because you might actually be able to get some real return on that. I don't know with what the way his contract is if someone's going to come after Adam Larson, but would you take calls on Riker Evans with, a year remaining I think anything is a potential possibility is a good phrase. Anything's a possibility with that group if you're when we get to the deadline, if you're not in contention or you're not getting the type of performance out of them that you're expecting.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I mean, could add on to that, it's if things aren't how they are, how you want them to be, sorry. Ahead of the deadline, even after Thanksgiving, like how many pieces are you willing to tear down? Because you already are. I mentioned this to Tim, I feel like you're already going to have a good amount of cap space next year. Jaden Schwartz, Jordan Eberle, Ellie Tolvanen, Mason Marchman at least come off the books. There you start to look at the guys who have a year left. Um, Jared, I don't like saying that name. I've long been a big proponent of Jared McCann, but Jared McCann's got a couple of years on there. You've got some guys who are RFAs. Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly consider it. You mentioned Evans. I mean, yes, he's your first real big D-man prospect. Has he panned out like you thought he would? I don't know if you can say that. So, I mean, there are some questions there. Hey, if they play to the structure that it seems like this Lane Lambert era will bring, a lot of the conversation can change, which does lead me to the next point. Um, I don't know if it's the right way to put it, but is it refreshing to see the sort of intensity, structure, and work rate that Lane Lambert's brought? Because you've seen practices before with this roster, with this franchise. I don't think they've ever been like this, where they're consistently stopping play. Like I think Hack stopped one here and there. I don't know if Dan did it like that. I don't remember him as clearly. Um, but like even the bag skate the other day that I think only a few of us saw but it was brutal. Uh, Total brutal bag skate. I know Allison Lucan was saying she hadn't seen one similar to that in a while. I don't know. Just what are your thoughts from the early, moments we've seen of the Lane Lambert era and how, this, because again, I feel like just having him here, having a structure that maybe they didn't, and not to discredit Dan Bilesma, but that they didn't have with Dan Bilesma, could really do wonders for a team that is lacking serious star power.
There's it kind of go you just hit on it with star power. It kind of goes back to the point of you have to have everybody contributing for this team to have success. And one of the ways that you make everyone feel that is through accountability from top to bottom. Like you put you put your quote unquote top line guys through a bag skate. You play, Freddie Gaudreau up and down the lines, and you put him on the second line one night as a wing, and you put him on the fourth line the next night as a center. You tell Matty Beniers like, hey, you're as great of a two-way center as you are. If we're not getting what we need, your ice time is going to drop. You tell Shane Wright, hey, you are giving us what we need instead of playing you 10 minutes a night, we're going to play you 16 minutes a night. Like I th- again, this is all going to have to play out over time, but I think there's a level of accountability with what Lane has brought that's just a little bit different. Hack wasn't the kind of he wasn't a shouter. He was the quiet like he was the quiet like dad is disappointed in you kind of way of getting his point across for the most part. Dan tried this the tact of, hey, we're going to put your arm around you and we're going to try and develop you and we're trying to get you that way. And when he had to be a bad guy because he was like that, I don't think it worked quite as well. And the accountability wasn't quite the same. Or trying to hold guys accountable wasn't quite the same. What did we notice the first day of camp? Lane Lambert's voice. And it was striking how much he wanted to make sure that his voice was heard by his players. And he stopped drills, he stopped practice, he made sure his voice was heard when he was either praising or he was getting on someone for not doing something the way that he wanted. Um, I don't now, how is that going to translate in games? How is that going to translate when he's behind the bench? Is he going to be raving and screaming and really getting on guys in those moments? Or is he going to be the coach that does that in practice, does that in the dressing room, but on the bench he's calm and he talks to guys in the way not a I don't want to say it's not productive to yell because sometimes it is productive to yell, but like in a way that gets his point across without having to be demonstrative and be in their face kind of yelling. Um, it's such a difference from what we saw last year, but I don't know if it's going to be a difference that works. And again, because you don't have the knowledge that you're going to get 90 points from two guys on your top line. You can't count on that. You might be able to count on 50. You might be able to count on in a good season 60. Um, but you don't have that knowledge that the way that he wants to coach is going to translate to success. You think it might, you hope it does, but you don't know for sure because your talent is so average across the board that you can't rely on having exceptional players being able to go out and implement that and know that you're going to get success out of it. When you have average guys, you need them to raise their level across the board in order to have success. How much does the system help that? How much does the coaching help that? That's kind of one of the great questions of how the season's going to go.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a good point. Um, and we touched about it, especially with Lambert's voice, but I think I'll shift. I was going to ask you about camp and what you'd seen from there. Would shift that because it feels like it was largely how the new guys were going to shift in and what you got from Berkeley Catton and Yanni Newman. Um, as someone who's, you've seen bad teams across a bunch of different sports. You've seen this team last year. Uh, I know it's not about us, right? Our job is not it's not a personal thing, but I know that fans do at least if they're going to be bad, make it entertaining, right? Let Berkeley Catton run loose. That Nani Newman's hammer the puck on the power play. What do you hope to see, whether it be, from a personal or entertainment standpoint, everyone to put it from this year's team? Because again, you're largely returning the same NHL group outside of a few swaps here and there. And you're still moving away from that expansion draft era while being in a, very full sports market, right? You're competing for attention. Um, as you know very well, it's not like you're going to have another neighbor in this building quite yet. So it seems like you've got some time for that, but you don't want to be forgotten, right? You don't want to be like, oh, who cares?
Yeah,
What do you hope to
yeah.
see this year?
There's a term. It's kind of a crass term, but it's either bleep or get off the pot. And it's like they need to figure out which of those things they're doing this year. Are they going to be good enough that they are in contention and then that allows them to make moves to supplement and improve the roster as you get closer to the deadline? Or are they, is this the first year of what we then look back on as a rebuild? And you play Berkeley Catton a ton, and you play Yanni Newman a ton, and you let the kids get their ice time. You play Shane a ton, you play Maddie a ton, you play Capo a ton when he gets back. You you make that switch and you start moving out the contracts that need to get moved out. The guys who are on their last year, the guys who might have 2 years left that you don't see a path for them helping you down the road. And you say, and you take your fan base and you say, hey, we're going to play the kids. We get to the US Thanksgiving or we get to Christmas or whatever, and they're out of it. You say, hey, we're going to play the kids. We're going to make this shift. We're going to move some veterans out. We're officially transitioning from our expansion era into our next chapter. And here's what it's look like. Here's what it looks like. It's going to suck, but please stay with us because we think in a couple of years these kids are going to really pop. Maybe we get a couple more high draft picks. Maybe we win the lottery and get Gavin McKenna. And you see the possibilities 2 to 3 years from now of them being a true, power. That's one path. The other path is, okay, they play better than we're expecting. They're more disciplined. They're more structured. They're having that success throughout the lineup. It looks like 22, 23 again to a certain extent. And we're talking when we get to, say, the Olympic break of like, okay, what are the moves they're going to make coming out of the break to enhance this roster? Because this is a team that's on the cusp of potentially getting a playoff berth. You hope that you're in one of those two camps. You really do. It's the in between, which is where I'm worried that they're going to be, that does nothing. Because if you're mediocre and you're not showing that you have a plan moving forward, then you don't draw the interest that you need to. You don't have the you don't have the you don't have the general sports fan going, oh, I want to go watch a team that's, you know, 6 points out of a wild card spot and 2 games under 500 in late January. Like that's not going to draw your interest. And again, in a crowded sports market where you have a lot of stuff going on that can draw attention away. So if you're in that position, that's bad. If you're in the position of we're breaking it down, we're playing the kids, we're trying to get a high draft pick, that's not as bad. It's not great because obviously you want to try and win, but still it's not as bad as being mediocre in the middle. And then obviously your goal is to be one of those teams that we're talking about at the Olympic break that's in contention. Um, I I worry that it's going to be that mushy middle is where they end up, where they don't know what their direction should be. And that is bad for a franchise in year five that is still searching for what its identity and what its direction should be and needs to start transitioning away from that initial inaugural season expansion group and start evolving moving forward. And I don't know if the way this season will play out will allow that to happen. If they have success, then yeah, you're evolving in that way to being back into being talked about as a playoff team, and you'll deal with the expiring contracts and all that later on because you're in the playoff conversation. Or you're the other way and it's breaking it down and starting the rebuild process. The middle is where it will suck, and I'm worried that's where they'll end up being.
Just, you know, maybe for better or worse, as our friend, I'm sure you get a lot of it too, but as our friend Ryan Divish would say, just not looking at his replies, I look, I see what people are saying. I try to keep some, to an extent, right? You're not looking at like the Facebook comments. That's like hell on earth.
Yes.
Um, but I think it like what you're talking about with the two paths is exactly what fans want. They're like, hey, I'm fine if you want to suck and play the kids, but then I know we're rebuilding. It feels like, I made this comparison with Everett, with the Mariners in what, 18, 19. You committed to it. You said, we're going to stop trying to add patchwork pieces here and there and not going for the big fish, Robinson Cano, of course. Um, you pick a direction, right? And yeah, sure. If I would love to come on here in a few months and say we were wrong and, they're doing all this stuff and they're actually, gunning for a spot in the playoffs. So they're in one. Um, but I would like to see some direction. I think that's what a lot of the fan base wants. They want to know what the hell's going on. Because if it's just another year like last two, where you're kind of in it, you got an outside shot and, aging guys are, aging and it's yeah, folks want that idea. So all
And
right. Well,
it's
that's
hard because you have season ticket holders who are coming up on their 5-year renewals this
yep.
year. And are they going to be willing to sign up for if you rebuild, if you tear it down, are they going to be willing to sign up for 2 more years of probably bad hockey in the hopes that when you get to the 27-28 season, you're kind of like maybe where um Anaheim is, or maybe even better
Mm,
off for them, like where Utah is this year, where you have some young pieces that's really become established as your core, and you've supplemented some veterans around that, and you're ready to see if you can make that jump into being a true contender in the Western Conference. I don't know. I don't know because you're still so young in the marketplace and you didn't grab the marketplace in the same way that Vegas did as an expansion franchise. I don't know if you can risk that. Um, you should not fear risking it, but I also understand from a front office perspective why that's a very dangerous and risky move to make when you have things like your season ticket, renewals coming up and all those other aspects that play into the that are so heavily involved in the finances of the NHL versus the way it is in other sports.
as Dylan from Emerald City Hockey would say, it is a results driven business. You can't
Yes.
just, have as much as I would love to just have fun. That's not how reality works.
Yep. Exactly.